Have you ever just wished you could, like, cut through all the noise and get right to the heart of a complicated issue?
Oh, yeah, definitely that aha moment when you finally understand the key points.
That's exactly what we are doing for you today, listeners. We are taking a deep dive into two really important reports from 1986.
Okay, 1986.
Yeah, these reports basically proposed, like, some huge changes to how teachers are educated.
Hmm.
And they wanted to change the whole teaching profession itself. Think of it as a shortcut to understanding, like, a really crucial moment in education reform.
Right, so these are not just like random reports. We are talking about tomorrow's teachers.
Yeah, tomorrow's teachers, that was from the Holmes group.
Yep, the Holmes Group. And then there's the Carnegie Forum report, A Nation Prepared, Teachers for the 21st Century.
Yeah, big names, big ideas.
Exactly. These were like bold plans. They wanted to completely change how teachers were trained.
And like the whole career path of a teacher.
Totally. And they sparked a lot of debate. People had strong opinions on both sides.
It wasn't just about the reports themselves, though.
Oh, right.
We're also looking at, like, an analysis of these reports. And we've got this survey of reactions from different people involved in education.
So we can see how these ideas were received back then.
Exactly. And what's really interesting for you, our listener, is that we're going to be looking at this whole thing through the lens of educational psychologists.
Ah, okay. Their specific perspective.
Yeah, like how these proposed changes might have shifted their roles or how they might have impacted their work.
So what we are trying to do today is pull out the most important stuff from this period of reform.
Yeah, the core ideas.
We want to understand the main points of disagreement,
And see what it all meant for the folks involved in educational psychology.
both those doing research and those working directly with teachers and students.
We want to give you a clear, easy-to-understand picture of this moment in education history.
And its potential long-term effects, because these reports really did have a lasting impact.
For sure. Okay, so, like, what were the main things that sparked this whole push for reform in teacher education back in the mid-'80s? What got the ball rolling?
Well, the Holmes Group was a major player
The
here.
Holmes Group, okay.
They started meeting back in 1983. It was a bunch of education deans who were kind of worried about all these different reform ideas floating around.
Right.
They actually named their group after Henry Holmes.
Henry Holmes.
Yeah, he was a dean at Harvard's Graduate School of Education.
Fancy.
And way back in 1927, he was already trying to make teacher education better. He believed that a good education system was really important for the whole country.
So these concerns weren't, like, brand new. It was more of a continuation of something that had been going on for a while.
Right, and the Holmes Group wasn't huge at first, just a small steering committee.
Okay.
But it grew a lot. By the time the research we're looking at was done, there were over 90 research universities involved.
Wow, that's a lot.
And there was a pretty hefty membership fee, too, like $4,000 a year.
Whoa. That shows you these institutions were serious about it.
Yeah, they were definitely committed. And the Holmes Group came up with 5 main calls for action.
5. Okay, let's hear them. What were they proposing?
The first one was all about making teacher education more intellectually solid.
Interesting.
They wanted future teachers to have more rigorous undergraduate courses.
Like in what areas?
Well, things like liberal arts and sciences.
So like a well-rounded education.
Exactly. But also more focus on how to actually teach those subjects, what we call subject matter pedagogy.
Ah, okay, so not just knowing the stuff, but knowing how to teach it.
Yeah, and they also wanted more intense, hands-on teaching experiences for those training to be teachers.
Makes sense. More practice before you were in the classroom. So basically, they wanted teachers who had a really good grasp of both the content and the teaching methods.
Right.
Okay, what was the second point?
Number 2 was the idea that, not all teachers are the same.
Right. Different levels of experience, different roles.
Exactly. So they wanted to differentiate teacher roles and certifications. How would that work?
Well, they thought it would be good to have a distinction between brand new teachers, experienced teachers, and those who take on leadership positions.
Like a career ladder for teachers?
Yeah, kind of. They even proposed specific names.
Oh, like what?
So, for example, there would be instructors. These would be people with a liberal arts degree.
Okay.
And they would teach for, say, 5 years, but under supervision.
Sort of like an apprenticeship.
Yeah, you could think of it that way. Then you'd have professional teachers who had more expertise in their subjects and teaching methods.
Got it.
And finally, career professionals who would be involved in things like curriculum development, testing, and research supervision.
Ah, so like The experts who help shape the whole system.
Yeah, exactly.
That's an interesting idea, creating a more defined pathway for teachers to move up in their careers. It makes you wonder how that might affect the quality of teaching and whether more teachers would stick with it long term. Right, some good questions there.
Okay, so what was their third call for action?
The third one was about professional exams for teachers.
Exams.
Yeah, and not just general knowledge exams. They wanted to set high standards for anyone entering the profession.
Okay.
So these exams would cover things like writing skills, speaking abilities, in-depth knowledge of the subject, and specific teaching skills for that subject.
Wow, so really making sure that every teacher was qualified.
Right.
And the fourth point?
The fourth one was about making the connection between universities and K-12 schools stronger.
Interesting. Why was that important?
Well, they wanted to see more educational research and how it's used in practice.
Ah, so the research actually informing what happens in the classroom.
Exactly. So they suggested creating professional development schools.
Professional development schools, what are those?
They compared them to teaching hospitals in medicine.
Oh, interesting.
So it would be like a partnership between a university and a school.
Where they could work together on research and teacher training.
Yeah. Exactly.
More of a team effort. So that would mean a more integrated approach to education, bridging the gap between theory and practice. Ultimately, that should benefit students. Okay, what was their final call to action?
The fifth one was about changing the professional responsibilities of teachers and giving them more autonomy.
More say in how things are done.
Right. They believed teachers should have more authority and independence in their work. And they thought teachers should have more of a voice in things like budgets and staffing.
Okay, so they really wanted to empower teachers.
Exactly. So as you can see, the Holmes Group had a pretty broad vision for changing teacher education.
Yeah, they were thinking big. Now, earlier you mentioned another important report from 1986, the Carnegie Forum report. How did that fit into this whole push for reform?
The Carnegie Forum report was called A Nation Prepared, Teachers for the 21st Century.
A Nation Prepared.
Yeah, and it had some similar ideas to the Holmes Group report, but with a slightly different angle. It was pretty connected to another report that came out around the same time called A Nation at Risk.
Okay, A Nation at Risk.
Yeah, that one was from the President's Commission on Excellence in Education.
So there was a lot of focus on education at that time.
Yeah, there was. And the Carnegie report really emphasized the connection between education and the economy.
Interesting.
Their main argument was that for the U.S. to stay competitive in the global economy, it needed a highly skilled workforce.
Which means you need a good education system.
Exactly. So they were basically saying that education reform was crucial for the country's economic well-being.
So better schools equal a stronger economy. Makes sense. What specific things do they want to change?
Well, one of their big ideas was to create a national board for teaching standards.
Oh, the national board.
Yeah. So this board would set the standards for what teachers should know and be able to do.
And also certify teachers.
Right. So basically a national benchmark for teaching quality.
Interesting. What else did they propose?
They also liked the idea of differentiated staffing, just like the Holmes Group.
Okay.
But they proposed a 5-tiered system.
5 tiers. Whoa.
Yeah. So you would have support staff for more routine tasks,
Okay.
then licensed teachers who would have a state license, then advanced certificate holders who would be experts in specific areas,
Got it.
then certified teachers with a master's degree in education and board certification.
So those are the highly qualified teachers.
Yeah. And finally, lead teachers who would be the most experienced and respected teachers with advanced certification.
Ah, so those are the teacher leaders.
Yeah, you could say that.
So again, a system that recognizes different levels of expertise.
Yeah.
What about teacher training itself? Did they propose changes there?
Yes, they did, and this one was a big one.
Okay, what was it?
They suggested that everyone who wanted to become a teacher should first get a bachelor's degree in arts and sciences.
So not in education.
No, not specifically in education at the undergraduate level. They basically thought that the bachelor's degree in education should be phased out.
Wow, that's a big change.
Yeah. And they wanted undergraduates to focus on a core curriculum of subjects like history, government, science, arts, and literature.
So giving future teachers a broader base of knowledge.
Exactly.
And then the actual teaching skills would be taught at the graduate level.
That's right.
Interesting. So they were essentially moving all of the pedagogy training to the master's level.
Yes.
What do they envision for those master's programs?
Well, they wanted them to be a lot more rigorous, more focused on research, and include internships with really good, experienced teachers.
So making those programs more demanding and more hands-on.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Did the Carnegie report talk about anything beyond teacher training and roles?
Yeah, they did. They were also concerned about the lack of diversity in the teaching profession.
Okay, an important issue.
They thought it was important to get more minority students into teaching. So they suggested things like collaborations between schools, universities, and businesses.
To make that happen.
Yeah. And they wanted to focus on retaining minority students in those programs.
So making sure they graduate and become teachers.
Right.
It's really important to have a teaching workforce that reflects the diversity of the students.
They definitely thought so.
Okay, what about motivating and rewarding good teaching? Did they have any ideas about that?
Yeah, they did. They thought that teachers' incentives should be linked to how well their students were doing.
So tying their rewards to student outcomes.
Right. And they wanted to give schools more resources to improve their effectiveness. They felt that the system wasn't always rewarding the best teachers.
Okay.
So they suggested a couple of different approaches. One was more administrative, setting performance goals, and the other was more market-based, giving teachers more flexibility in how they offer their services.
So kind of like giving teachers more control over their careers.
Yeah, you could see it that way.
Interesting. That's always a controversial topic. What was their final objective?
They wanted to make teaching a more competitive career option.
In terms of salary and opportunities?
Yeah, both. They thought that teacher salaries should be based on things like experience, certification level, and effectiveness.
So making the pay more comparable to other professions that require a similar level of education.
Exactly. They wanted to attract and keep talented people in teaching by making it a more rewarding and stable career.
That makes a lot of sense. So both of these reports suggested some pretty big changes.
Yeah, they did.
I'm curious, how did people in the education field react to these ideas? Did everyone agree?
Well, teachers and administrators had seen a lot of reform efforts come and go over the years.
Yeah.
And those efforts hadn't always led to real change. So there was some skepticism.
Understandably, people tend to resist big changes. It's human nature.
Yeah, and especially in a system as large and complex as education. Researchers like Nisbet and Collins have written about this. It's really hard to fundamentally change how things are done in education.
Yeah, it's a huge undertaking.
It is. So the big question was, would these reforms actually lead to lasting change? Would they really make a difference for students?
Good question. But were there any signs that these ideas were gaining traction?
Yeah, there were. The Holmes Group, for example, was really active.
Okay.
They created national committees and regional groups to promote their ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And the universities that were members had to send in yearly reports on how they were implementing the recommendations.
So they were holding each other accountable.
Yeah, they were. They also started a fellowship program to encourage more minority students to become teachers.
Oh, that's great.
And they organized conferences to connect education departments with liberal arts colleges. Plus, they got funding from several foundations and even the U.S. Department of Education.
That's a big deal.
It was. So they had some real momentum.
It sounds like it. What about the Carnegie Forum report? Did it have an impact too?
Yeah, definitely. For example, the NEA, the National Education Association,
Yeah.
they started pushing for teacher-controlled professional standards boards.
Which aligns with the Carnegie report.
Exactly. And in Rochester, New York, teachers created mentor-teacher programs
Oh, interesting.
where experienced teachers would take on leadership roles and support new teachers.
That's a great idea.
The AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, did something similar too. And the Carnegie Corporation itself put a lot of money into implementing their recommendations. Something like $10 million.
Wow, they were putting their money where their mouth was.
They were. So even though there was some initial skepticism, both reports did spark some real action.
That sounds like it. Okay, so we've talked about these reports and some of the reactions. Now let's get to the part that's really relevant to our listeners today.
Okay.
What did all of this mean for educational psychologists?
Educational psychologists have always been involved in education reform.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Think about people like William James, G. Stanley Hall, E.L. Thorndike.
Yeah, some of the big names in the field.
Their research and ideas have had a huge impact on how teachers are trained and how teaching is done.
For sure. They've been pioneers in understanding child development, how people learn, how to assess learning, and how to design effective instruction.
Exactly.
But why should educational psychologists have been particularly interested in these 1980s reports?
Well, both the Holmes and Carnegie reports had specific proposals about teacher education that were very relevant to educational psychology.
Okay.
For example, they both wanted to see a lot more graduate-level coursework in areas like research on teaching and learning, human development, and educational measurement.
Hmm.
So if those recommendations were implemented, it could have meant a bigger role for educational psychologists in colleges of education.
Yeah, more teaching, more influence.
Exactly. And it might have increased the demand for people with doctorates in educational psychology.
To teach those courses.
Right.
So these reports were signaling potential growth for the field.
Yeah, they were.
What other proposals were relevant to educational psychologists?
Well, another big one was the focus on professional exams for teachers.
Right, we talked about those earlier.
Yeah, educational psychologists are experts in test development.
So they would be the ones to create those exams.
Well, they would definitely have a leading role.
Okay.
They would need to make sure the exams were valid and reliable.
Right.
And set appropriate standards.
So their expertise would be crucial for making sure those high-stakes exams were fair and accurate.
Exactly.
But there was also a potential downside for educational psychologists in these reports, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was.
What was it?
Remember the proposal to get rid of the undergraduate education degree?
Yeah, and require a liberal arts degree instead.
Right. That could have had a big impact on undergraduate courses in educational psychology.
How so?
Well, if future teachers weren't required to take those courses anymore.
There would be fewer students.
Yeah. And that could have affected the programs and the faculty who taught those courses. So it's a mixed bag, right?
Yeah, some potential benefits and some potential challenges. But how did people feel about all of this? You mentioned a study earlier.
Yeah, a pretty big study was done to look at how much agreement there was with these reform ideas.
Okay. What was the main goal of this study?
The researchers wanted to know how different groups in the education world felt about the specific proposals in the Holmes and Carnegie reports. They knew that for any big reform to be successful, the people who are affected by it need to be on board.
Yeah, makes sense. You can't just force change on people.
Right. So the study was designed to capture the views of these different groups.
Okay, so they weren't just looking at the reports themselves. They were also looking at how those reports were received.
Exactly. And they were particularly interested in some of the criticisms that had been leveled against the Holmes group.
What were some of those criticisms?
Well, one was that the Holmes group was seen as being too exclusive.
Okay.
It was mainly made up of big research universities, and a lot of people felt like they had a pretty narrow view of teacher education.
So not very representative of all the different types of institutions that train teachers.
Yeah, that was the criticism. Many state colleges and universities weren't part of the Holmes group.
Okay.
And those institutions awarded a lot of teaching degrees.
So they had a big stake in this.
They did, and they formed their own group called TechCU.
TechCU?
Yeah, the Teacher Education Council of State Colleges and Universities.
Okay, I see.
And they actually proposed some alternative ideas to the Holmes and Carnegie recommendations.
So there was a diversity of opinions.
Yeah, there was.
Not everyone was on the same page. What were the main assumptions that guided the researchers who did this study?
Well, they had three main assumptions.
Okay, what were they?
First, they assumed that if there was a lot of disagreement about a particular proposal, it was probably less likely to be implemented.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Second, they assumed that individuals would have their own unique views.
Okay.
So some people might agree with some proposals and disagree with others.
Right, it's not just black and white.
Exactly. And third, they assumed that people from the Holmes group would be more likely to support the reforms overall.
Yeah, because they were the ones who came up with them.
Right.
Who did they actually survey in this study?
They focused on three main groups.
Okay.
Representatives from the universities that were part of the Holmes group, members of Division 15 of the APA, which is the group for educational psychologists,
Got it.
and faculty volunteers from institutions that were members of TechSkew.
So they tried to get a range of perspective.
They did. But it's important to note that the TechSkew sample wasn't randomly selected.
Okay, so those results might not be completely representative.
Right.
How did they actually collect the data? What kind of survey did they use?
They created a really detailed survey with 149 items.
149 items. Wow, that's a lot.
It was, and each item was based on a specific proposal from the Holmes and Carnegie reports.
Okay.
They often use the exact wording from the reports. And people had to say how much they agreed or disagreed with each statement.
Using a Likert scale, I imagine?
Yeah, a Likert scale. So from strongly agree to strongly disagree.
Okay, so a pretty standard
Yeah.
survey format.
Yeah. And they organized all those items into 8 different sections.
Covering different aspects of the reforms.
Right. Things like teacher certification, teacher authority, the structure of teacher education programs,
Mm-hmm.
the relationship between schools and universities, the role of liberal arts education, minority teacher recruitment, education funding, and the commitments made by the Holmes Group.
Wow, so it really covered everything.
Yeah, it was very thorough.
So after they collected all that data, how did they analyze it?
They used a statistical technique called factor analysis.
Factor analysis, okay.
Yeah, it's a way to find patterns in the data. You can think of it as grouping similar responses together.
Okay, so it helps make sense of all that information.
Exactly. It helps simplify things.
What were the main patterns they found?
The analysis showed 3 main factors.
Okay.
They called them incremental changes, sweeping changes, and financial changes.
Interesting names. Let's break those down. What were the incremental changes?
The incremental changes were things that could be seen as gradual improvements,
Okay.
like raising the standards for teacher certification, making teachers more accountable,
Right.
providing better clinical experiences for student teachers.
More hands-on practice.
Yeah. Improving cooperation between education departments and liberal arts. Recruiting more minority teachers.
Okay.
And increasing teacher salaries.
Got it. So things that most people would probably agree are good ideas,
Yeah, pretty much.
but not necessarily radical changes.
Right.
What about the sweeping changes?
Those were the more controversial proposals.
Okay.
Things like getting rid of the undergraduate education degree
Yeah, that was a big one.
and requiring a liberal arts degree for all future teachers and moving all of the teacher training to the graduate level.
So those were the proposals that would really shake things up.
Yeah, definitely.
And what about financial changes?
Those were the proposals that focused on giving teachers more control over money and staffing.
Okay.
Things like giving teachers more input on budgets and letting them have more autonomy in how they work.
Got it. So more financial and professional freedom for teachers.
Exactly.
Okay, so the study found these 3 main dimensions of the reform proposals. What did they find when they compared the responses of the 3 groups?
Okay, so remember the 3 groups.
Yeah, the Holmes Group members, the educational psychologists, and the TechSage-U faculty.
Right. Well, there were some significant differences in how they responded to those 3 factors.
Interesting.
Not surprisingly, the Holmes Group members were more in favor of both the incremental changes and the sweeping changes.
Makes sense since they were the ones proposing those changes.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that the educational psychologists were also more in favor of the sweeping changes than the TESC faculty.
Oh, that is interesting. Why do you think that was?
Well, the study looked at some of the characteristics of the respondents,
Okay.
and they found that the TESC faculty, on average, had more experience as educators, and they spent more of their time working with undergraduate students.
So they were more invested in the traditional teacher training programs.
Yeah, you could say that.
And maybe they were more resistant to the idea of eliminating the undergraduate education degree.
That's a possible explanation. The educational psychologists, on the other hand, were more focused on graduate training and research.
So maybe they saw the shift to graduate-level pedagogy as a way to make the profession more prestigious.
Yeah, that's possible.
Interesting. What about the financial changes factor? Were there differences there too?
Yeah, the Holmes Group was more supportive of giving teachers more financial autonomy than the TESC faculty,
Okay.
but that difference might not have been as strong statistically. It's possible that some of the pairwise comparisons between groups wouldn't have been significant if they had used a stricter statistical test.
So a bit more ambiguity there.
Yeah.
They also looked at differences within each group, right? Like, were there any interesting patterns based on demographics or other factors?
Yeah, they found a few interesting things.
Okay, like what?
For example, among the TESC faculty, men were less supportive of both the sweeping changes and the financial changes.
A gender difference.
Yeah, and the researchers thought this might be related to the types of students they worked with.
Okay.
More men in the TESC sample said they worked with graduate students, while more women said they worked with undergraduates.
So maybe the men were more concerned about the impact on graduate programs.
That's one possibility.
What about the educational psychologists? Were there any differences within that group?
Yeah, they found that educational psychologists who specialized in learning were more supportive of both the incremental changes and the financial changes,
Yeah.
than those who specialized in measurement and statistics.
Interesting.
The researchers initially thought this might be because learning psychologists spend more time with undergraduate students,
Okay.
but their data didn't really support that idea.
Hmm. So maybe it's something else.
Yeah, maybe different theoretical orientations or research interests within educational psychology influenced their views.
That makes sense. It's not a monolithic field.
Right.
What about within the Holmes group? Were there any internal disagreements?
Well, the main difference they found was related to experience. People with less than 25 years of experience were more supportive of the financial changes.
Younger people may be more open to change.
Yeah, you could say that. So even within a group that generally agreed on the need for reform, there were some differences of opinion.
Yeah, makes sense.
Hmm.
Okay, so what were the main takeaways from this study? What were the big conclusions?
Well, one interesting point was about the incremental changes.
Okay.
The researchers wondered if those proposals were included partly as a strategy
A strategy for what?
to make the whole reform agenda seem more palatable, or maybe to just reinforce existing values and make the profession look good.
So maybe not really about radical change.
Yeah, that's one interpretation.
What about the sweeping changes?
The big debate there was about eliminating the undergraduate education degree.
Right.
The Texas U faculty were really against that idea.
Yeah, it would have been a huge change for them.
It would have. And it really highlighted the different philosophies about teacher training.
Some people believe it should be at the undergraduate level, others at the graduate level.
Exactly.
What about the financial changes?
Well, the idea behind those was that giving teachers more control would attract better people to the profession
Okay.
and help retain good teachers.
So it was about raising the status of the profession.
Right. But the researchers pointed out that there's research suggesting that salary and autonomy might not be the main reasons teachers leave.
So maybe those changes wouldn't have had the desired effect.
Yeah, it's a complex issue.
The study also raised some concerns about the Holmes group itself, right?
Yeah, they pointed out that the Holmes group was mostly made up of people from elite universities, and they didn't have a lot of representation from faculty who actually taught teachers.
So their perspective might have been a bit skewed.
Yeah, it's possible. They were mostly administrators, not professors.
Interesting.
And they didn't have a lot of input from people at smaller colleges and universities.
So the study was basically saying that the Holmes group's proposals might not have reflected the views of the whole teacher education community.
Right.
That makes sense. For reform to be successful, you need buy-in from everyone who's going to be affected by it.
Definitely.
The study also found that educational psychologists didn't participate as much as they had initially indicated.
Yeah, that was kind of surprising.
Why do you think that happened?
Well, the survey was pretty long.
Yeah, we talked about that. 149 items.
It was a lot. But there is another reason, too.
Okay.
The leadership of Division 15, the educational psychology group, had some concerns. They felt like the survey didn't really address the importance of educational psychology.
So they felt like their perspective wasn't being represented.
Yeah, that's right.